Welcome to the Purposeful MD podcast. As a physician, you've sacrificed so much of your life for other people, your patients, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. What would it feel like to spend time doing what you enjoy and to live without guilt? I'm your host, Dr. Laura Sutton, a family physician, certified coach, and business owner. If you're a medical professional on a journey towards your most purposeful life, a life with more time and energy, and ultimately more joy, then this is the podcast for you. All right. Are you ready to get started?
I'm always ready. Born ready.
Yay! Thank you so much for doing this. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Jillian Rigert. She has formal training in dentistry, medicine, and oral medicine. She's a certified life and professional leadership coach, coaches within a large healthcare institution as well as private clients. Jillian's missions are to bring the humans back into healing. I love that. And to help people create a life true to themselves, free from societal pressures that lead us astray. She hosts a YouTube channel called A Life True to You for those seeking community on their journey. I know that you are also an Air Force veteran. You are a TEDx speaker. You are the administrator of your own Facebook group, Permission to Pivot, which is just an amazing group of humans. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
I appreciate it. And I think probably my favorite role is a dog mom.
Yes. Reese. We love Reese. We love when you post pictures of Reese.
Yeah, I love that dog. So hopefully if people aren't dog lovers, maybe you can create a space in your heart for Reese.
Yes. How can you not love Reese? He's just the cutest.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you so much. I am delighted to be on your new podcast. I can't wait and to hear your wonderful messages that you'll be sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. So we're going to talk today about reclaiming the narrative. And I love this topic so much, about how can we as women in the medical space take back our power? How can we reclaim the story and not feel like we are just at the whims of the patriarchy and the powers that be within the medical space? And the more I dug into this, I was just so angry and also hopeful for the future because I see the tide turning. And so it's just so wonderful to talk about this with you. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you became interested in this topic.
Yeah, so growing up, I kind of felt this oppression about being a woman where I was very uncomfortable. I wouldn't say I had gender dysphoria. I just felt discomfort with embracing my feminine side. And I think at the time it came from observing the differences in the way that women were treated, both within my own family and in society. And I was quite a tomboy. And so I do present very athletic and wanted to be really strong. And I couldn't pinpoint exactly what was going on. It didn't have the language or the awareness at the time. But in pursuit of less oppression, I wanted to prove myself in some way. And I wanted to be an Air Force oral maxillofacial surgeon and psychoanalyzing myself. I'm like, wow, so much of that was because I just wanted to reduce the amount that I was being oppressed. I wanted to be strong and fierce. And to me, that looked like being an Air Force oral surgeon, where you are equipped with the tools and with also the identity that helps you to stand strong. And so then when I lost that career, and I had identified it wasn't the exact good fit for me from a wellness standpoint, having it all stripped away and being on a healing journey allowed me to lean in and to really pinpoint what was going on. Why did I feel I needed to do that in order to have some sort of self-worth, in order to protect my sensitive self, what at the time I thought was a weakness, because in our society, so many of the feminine traits are depicted in a way that makes us feel like it should be hidden and like ashamed of those things. And I like that you said you're angry, because I developed kind of a fierceness. Like, actually, that is my gift. That is what I have to offer the world. And I feel grief of all the years I tried to be someone different. And I love that you also said the tides are turning, because once I entered into this group of women physicians who are reclaiming their power, reclaiming their narrative, I felt like I was starting to become whole again. I'm like, that's what I was missing. I was missing models of women who are embracing their true gifts, who they are, and demonstrating extraordinary leadership from embracing that feminine side and not hiding it.
Yeah, that's so powerful. It sounds like you were maybe consciously, maybe subconsciously, but really trying to sublimate these traditional feminine qualities with emotional intelligence and intuition and some of these qualities that we think are have been traditionally feminine qualities, and really trying to step into that fierceness, which is has traditionally been a masculine quality, and feeling that in order for you to have this sense of self-worth, you had to be in the Air Force and an oral surgeon and really kick butt in this male dominated field, in this male dominated area. And it sounds like that you lost a little bit of yourself. And I know you studied a lot with Martha Beck, and she talks
Mhm.
about finding your path and your purpose and this integrity, meaning that you're feeling whole. And you said that, and that really that exploration and that understanding, you said, that didn't quite happen until you were no longer in the Air Force and no longer in that environment. You realized that that was not what was true for you. And then finding this tribe of women who are owning their femininity and owning their power, owning their greatness, and really just owning who they are is just such a magical and powerful thing for you. And I love that.
Yeah, and we don't have to do it. And in along my journey, there are a lot of women who actually were part of the problem because they felt the oppression and then they oppressed other women.
Right.
And in order to be assertive, we don't have to be assertive like a bully, to show.
Right.
I love Kristen Neff's fierce self-compassion, because it's showing that we can be fierce with compassion. We can be fierce without putting people down. We can be strong without having to feel that we have to make other people small. And what I observed in myself was that in times where I was feeling oppressed and didn't have the physical strength or the internal confidence to use my voice, I had a lot of self-directed inner negative dialogue, coped with a pretty severe eating disorder that almost cost me my life. In order to save my own life, in order to create meaning, in order to regain, I would say, get in the driver's seat of my own life, like, it was essential. When I leaned into Martha's work, it was because I was desperate, and people don't know just how ill I was back then because I wasn't in public, right? I was leading a very secret life where I was in survival mode. And now it's only been like 2.5 years later, and leaning into her work and her message of the importance of living true to yourself. Like, I feel it so deeply that it's like you have to share it with other people. We have to spread this message. We have to help other people develop a life that's true to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Martha's story and how she suffered from that for so long through much of her young life and her academic life, is feeling this need to really fit into this mold. And then as she really found herself and became more of who she is, she realized this mold that she had boxed herself in and that society boxed her in isn't who she really is. And now she's living her best life and living the life that's true to her. And it's just such a beautiful story. And it sounds like that transition and that journey has been really powerful for you too. And you mentioned about the females that you saw, the role models, also had been oppressed, and so they're doing some oppressing. And I think we have to have compassion. You mentioned self-compassion. We also have to have some compassion for these other women too, that they're not to necessarily excuse what's going on, but they're responding and reacting to a system that they grew up in as well. I'm sure you had this as in your medical training and your dental training, as attendings who treated residents a certain way and residents who treated students a certain way because that's how they were treated. And so this cycle just perpetuates. And I think it's tough because it's really hard to be the first one to say, I'm not gonna do what was done to me, because if people just that's just human nature. We see and we do what has been modeled for us. So
And
yeah.
you're somebody that I see as part of the change. Can you share part of your journey and how you kind of reclaimed and demonstrated, I believe, the type of mentorship I would love to share with everybody else?
Yeah. So I'm in primary care, family physician, and I went a very traditional route, got married right out of med school, had my first daughter in my residency. She's my only daughter. My only daughter. I have other bonus children, but she's my only. And my my daughter's dad and I split up when she was about 6 years old. And as part of that process, I was also growing in my leadership within my organization and really starting to I was trying to get into the boys club. I realize it now, and starting to see how, as a woman and especially as a single parent, just the deck was stacked against me. And I didn't feel like there was a way that I could break through that. I couldn't break that glass ceiling. And it was really frustrating for me to see that some of the taller, white, louder men in my organization just had more airtime, and that the qualities that we traditionally had associated with leadership of just this self-confidence and, well, I'm going to speak because I have something to say, and the mansplaining in these meetings was just really, it's so much more noticeable to me now that I look back. I don't think I realized it when I was in it because I was trying to be a part of it. But I realize it now. Wow, that was some really heavy discrimination and some biases. And maybe they weren't conscious, maybe they were subconscious, but those biases were still there and still existed. And once I realized that, I was able to step more into my own power. And similar to you, we found each other in this path too of finding other women who have stood up and said, I don't need to be like that man in order to have my voice heard. I don't need to be like that man in order to be an effective leader or effective physician. I need to just be more like me.
Hmm.
And when I'm authentic and true to myself, that's where I'm really going to shine. And so it has been a process, and I still catch myself even noticing when I get into this mode of, oh, if I could just be more like him, or if I could just do more of have more of these traditional masculine qualities. And I think, no, that's not me. And every time that I do that, then I feel like I'm taking a little piece of I'm taking a little energy away from another woman who needs to be standing up for themselves. And so I feel like by being more of who I am, then I'm encouraging others to do the same. And I know you're doing that as well with your YouTube channel and your coaching and your Facebook group, is just how do we be more of ourselves and be true and authentic to ourselves, because that's what the world needs. That's what we all need. And so that's what drives me.
I love that you shared that. I was thinking back to when I applied to oral surgery, and every single person in the interview was wearing a black suit, and we all looked very masculine. And I was the only person, first interview, did not own a black suit yet. I did have it for the rest of them. But then I observe now other women in leadership and how we dress more masculine. And so I found that was very restrictive. That's not how I like to dress. My favorite thing is to wear goofy t-shirts and wear artsy clothes. And I wear before society told me what I should do, my freshman year of high school, I wore very bold colors. I wore a skirt every day with tights underneath. Like I was, I'm a pretty conservative dresser, but I was um often called eccentric in the way that I dressed, but that was me. It was just this expression of this artist side that just wanted to be myself, right? That just wanted to be wholly myself. And I love to put together outfits. The objectification that I received from those outfits made me decide, I wore sweatpants sophomore year and beyond. And now in the professional sector, I always wear, again, it's like it's in my head, this conflict, because I work in academia and I observe a lot of times that you still have to lean towards very professional outfits, which oftentimes when I'm observing are more masculine business suits again. I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling very conflicted because I still want to wear my bold colors. I still want to wear my t-shirts. I still want to be artsy. And there's a time and a place for it, but I also don't want to abandon who I am. So I question, is this the right environment for me to fully thrive? And there's all these different institutions. So academia isn't academia, but it's in checking in with yourself. What do you have to forfeit when you go to work each day? And how does that accumulate over time? Because if you're feeling like you're not able to show up your true self, and then you take that back home with you, it's going to create conflict in both your personal and professional life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such an important point that you bring up. And the word that comes to mind for me is the microaggressions of the objectification of our clothing, of our hair, even things like, well, should I put on makeup? I didn't put on makeup for this. I feel like I'm just talking to you. And so but it's these decisions we have to make every day about, how do I dress? Am I dressing for myself, or am I dressing for this environment in which I feel like I have to conform? And you're right, the professional dress, I'm doing air quotes, professional dress is very male centric, and it's very white centric also. I know people of color really struggle with this as too, is how to fix their hair and how to wear their jewelry. So I think we just have to be very aware of the environment that we're creating and that we're perpetuating. You said bringing that home. My daughter is 16, almost 17 years old, and I certainly don't want her to feel like she can't express herself. Now, she goes to a private school, so she is somewhat limited. She has to wear a uniform, but I don't want her to feel like she can't fully be who she is. And so I think that's the message that I try to pass on to her and to my stepdaughters too, is being very aware of what are the messages that we're perpetuating. And I want to get back to something that you said about the traditional feminine qualities and traditional masculine qualities. And one of the studies that, in preparation for our conversation, I had to go back and review was that the Journal of the Journal of the American Medical Association found that patients that are cared for by female physicians actually have better outcomes and lower mortality rates. And this is a study that, I don't think the study itself has been replicated, but these findings have been replicated, that people who are cared for by female physicians, they're healthier. And so then that just turns everything upside down, that we've been told by society that these traditional feminine qualities are not useful in medicine and not useful in leadership. And it just really drives home the point that, yeah, we have a lot to offer the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that if we are able to impact more patients, then patients would actually live longer. And does not mean any disrespect to my male physician colleagues. It's meant to highlight that these qualities that use the word weakness have been a sign of weakness. This intuition, this listening, this compassion, some of these just kind of softer skills are really what's needed in medicine in the world. And then we also know that large companies who have more women that sit on the board actually do better. Their financial performance is better, and they outperform companies that have less diverse leadership. And so that's why I think the tide is turning, as we're starting to really realize that, hey, we know what we're talking about. And you can't keep stepping on us, because we're going to continue to show us what we're made of, to show you what we're made of.
Yeah, and I think that the articles even talked about the male-dominated type of specialties often that women are now really leaning into, like surgical specialties and their
Hmm.
outcomes, so people can look into those. And you're painting the picture of a leader at the table that's loud and that again, this topic is reclaiming our narrative, right? But is somebody when the people are climbing the ladder, it's often the person who speaks the loudest.
Hmm.
And I love Susan Cain's work on the power of introverts and how when we observe and we give a full view from listening to other people's perspectives, and just because somebody's in a leadership role doesn't mean that they're a leader. Just because someone's charismatic and loud doesn't mean that they're a good leader. And to identify aspects of this isn't just male female but introvert extrovert, the power of being an introvert and how introverts are very strong leaders and reclaiming that narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I consider myself an introvert too. And a lot of my clients, my coaching clients are introverts. And I felt a common theme from them that they feel like their leadership qualities are not as valued and that they're not a good leader because they're not as loud and they're not as extroverted. And I've actually pointed them to Susan Cain's work several times. And there are a couple really good articles from the Harvard Business Review too about the power of introverts. And so I think it's again, it just brings home that message that the more we can stay true to ourselves, then the bigger impact we're going to have on people around us. And then we encourage other people to stay true to themselves too. So yeah, I love that so much.
And I think
Yeah.
something that kind of has to go with what happens if we don't? What happens if we don't embrace who we are? Because people pleasing and making ourselves smaller is a response to trying to fit in and being told that we need to be somebody other than we are. For me, people pleasing in early life was something that kept me safe. And I found that to be similar in my adult life when we are in a situation where, it's so unfortunate how many stories I hear about the abuse, especially in academia, that I'm hearing it, and where people are so oppressive that in order to keep yourself safe, you have to people please. And to check in with how is that affecting you. For me, it makes me feel like I'm sacrificing parts of who I am. It makes me feel like I'm quieting my voice. It makes me feel smaller, like I'm just cowarding down. It does not feel good. I am developing a strong emotional reaction to it because I know how it's impacted me throughout my life. And so when people are checking in with themselves now, and that comes up in many different types of discussions, some of which you have to consider relationships you want to keep, such as families, and how are you going to, try to compromise at some levels. But if it's part of your work environment and you're noticing how detrimental it's impacting you, and how do we start to reshape how we show up, become more assertive, develop better boundaries, find our voice, find ways to communicate that are empowering?
Yeah. Yeah. The people pleasing, that's been such a big part of my life and my discovery. And we'll have to do another episode on that because it's such a big topic, especially as we're recording this around the holidays. It can be a big topic. Folks feel the need to make sure they're meeting everybody else's expectations. So yeah, love that you brought that up. The other thing that I've noticed for myself is that when I am not living my fullest self, I can't be creative. I can't I can't do anything that I feel like will impact the world. I don't feel like I'm a good physician, and so I kind of shrink in my physician role and I am not fully present with my patients. I'm not fully present with my family. I'm not fully present with my clients. And so in order for me to really be the best version of myself and access all of my brain power, my frontal lobe, and all of that creativity and all of the beauty that I know is there and is in you and in all of us, I have to I have to tell myself and remember that yeah, I'm here for a reason. I'm here for a purpose. I'm I'm here to serve, and I'm here to help other physicians and other women realize that they are worthy and don't have to do anything. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. You're worthy just because of who you are. And I can't do that when I'm staying small. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's a responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to step away from that kind of patriarchal figure and environment and really step into my power. And people like you and the communities that we found really just, again, just they make it makes me feel at home, and that's when I do my best work. So
I love that you said that because it's so important to tune into the messages we're sending to ourselves, such that if
yes.
you aren't sharing your voice and you have this internal belief that you're not worthy, you reinforce that voice. Whereas you can reclaim your own voice, you can set your values and that you follow through with your values, knowing that your values matter. That's demonstrating to you that, you know what, I matter. My values matter. I am worthy. And this is how we demonstrate that, because when we allow other people to control we always say that other people can't control our thoughts, but allow our thoughts to accept what other people say about us that could be detrimental, then we enforce that messages over and over and over, and it becomes a habit. And
Mm-hmm.
so as we start, you do great discussions on boundaries and like even thought boundaries. If someone says something that you know isn't true, but it's bringing something up, activating a thought about yourself inside that has been practiced for a really long time, where you feel like, gosh, I'm just kind of spiraling into this sense of feeling unworthy, like I don't belong here, like my voice doesn't matter. Check in. We love coaching. I love therapy, coaching, friends, just to take a step back and to observe what thoughts are coming up for you and what beliefs have you had about yourself for such a long time. Because as you're starting to let go of that, it's really uncomfortable, even though those
Mm-hmm.
thoughts and beliefs can be uncomfortable, they're familiar.
Right.
So if your ideal is to want to feel worthy and to extract your worthiness away from the achievements, but that's been a well practiced correlation, it's going to take time to
Mm-hmm.
recreate that behavior and that thought process, because we could say it all day long, but then at the end of the day it's like, oh man, my worthiness still depended on my achievement, my title, my promotion, my finances, my relationships, like whatever it is. And so how can we make it true when we say you are worthy and it doesn't depend on those things?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why having people around you, whether it's a friend that you can, like you said, a friend that you can bounce something off of, or a coach, or working with a therapist that can help us to either validate or invalidate these stories that we tell ourselves, and help us to reclaim that narrative for ourselves and rewrite our story. And that all of those things have been such an important part of my journey as well, coaching and therapy, and amazing friends that I know that will not just cheer me on, but also to help check me when I'm starting to get down on myself and, no, that's not true, and that's something that you're telling yourself. And so, yeah, so what what are some things that you would advise somebody who's listening that feels like they're stuck in this narrative for themselves? What can somebody do?
First, take a step back. Oftentimes, just getting outside of our everyday routine. We like to go. I know you've gone places to write, but so one thing I wish I would have done differently when I left my first career and started a new one was to give myself space to rest. You said that you were having a hard time being creative. A lot of times, because we've gotten into survival mode and we're just trying to get by, we lose our creativity and our capacity to think on a full spectrum of options. So that's the first thing. I would find the capacity to create space for yourself. And that can look different for everybody. But in that space, then you're allowed to explore and to rest enough to get into the mindset that can start to really challenge and observe the things that are going on, to be more creative with options. But know that your nervous system is going to need a reset. So when we say, let's pause, well, your nervous system might be extraordinarily restless when you try to take a step back. And that's why it's important. I love the helping modalities such as therapy, a coach, have someone to walk with you in that discomfort, because the challenge of sitting in discomfort is many of us don't have the tools to do it. So then we throw ourselves back into what we were used to, such as working too much or old thoughts and behaviors. So be intentional about how you would like to spend that time. And there's a lot of blind spots. So, even as coaches ourselves, it's really hard to self coach because you've got blind spots. And that's where it's nice to have a friend that can call you out and not just, as you were saying, cheer you on, but give you a little resistance and say, I'm observing you say this. Tell me more. What does that mean for you? Is that a belief you would like to continue to hold on to? How is that serving you? How is it not? But I think that everyone's journey is obviously going to look different. So when people are tuning into this, sharing what they're resonating with, sharing where they're at, and then we have a whole bunch of resources and people that help others to navigate depending on what they bring up. So just know you're not alone, and there's very safe communities, and there's no pressure to do anything that is an investment financially. So we have resources that fit the full spectrum of what you're seeking and where you feel you can meet yourself right now.
Yeah, I love that. Just recognizing that we're not alone, because that feeling of being stuck actually can perpetuate the loneliness. And especially when if we're surrounded by men and people that we don't feel can really relate to us and understand our experience, that can just further make us feel like I'm the only one that feels like this. And I
Mm.
absolutely agree with you. You're not. So
Yeah, I'm so grateful you said that. I think feeling like you're stuck is one of the most dangerous mindsets we can be in. I find that at my psychological distress levels, when they were the highest, it was because I felt trapped. I feel like I didn't have
yes.
any other options, which is why it's important to take a step back. And when you are in a state of distress, that's when your mind cannot think clearly. So if you're in that state, it's just important to know, please don't trust your mind. If you're feeling like the only way out, sometimes we've lost too many people to suicide. And that feeling of being stuck and trapped was one of my highest risk factors and thought patterns that made me feel I didn't have many options. And that's where, if you don't have hope right now, leaning and borrowing the hope of others who make you feel safe and supported is paramount.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely. If you're feeling that way, please reach out. The number 988 went live last year as a suicide and mental health hotline. And so please take advantage of that if you need to. So, yes. Thank you so much, Jillian,
Yes.
for being on. I'm so grateful to see you and to talk with you. Where can we find you?
If they want to live a life true to themselves, they can join us on YouTube, A Life True to You. And I'm on LinkedIn. It's a really great way to get a hold of me.
Great. Thank you so much, Jillian Rigert. Really appreciate you being on with us today. And I hope to have you back soon.
I would love to. And of course, you got to come back on my YouTube channel so we can continue discussions there as well. Thanks, Laura.
I will anytime. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Purposeful MD podcast. If you like what you hear, please rate and review the show. Please also visit my website, www.thepurposefulmd.com, for free downloads or to discuss working with me as your coach.